right, so I'm here with Katherine Center. I'm so excited. Katherine is one of my all-time favorite authors, and she's well aware of this because I tell her every opportunity I get. Today we are talking about her new novel, Happiness for Beginners. So thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm excited to be here.
So what I wanted to know about this particular novel is, did you build a novel around the theme of happiness? Or did you come up sort of with the story idea and then sort of discover that happiness would be a great theme to go along with the story you created?
That's a really good question. I started writing the story before I realized that happiness was going to be the theme. And actually, while I was writing it, I was reading a nonfiction book about happiness and positive psychology that was actually published by my same publishing house, called Happy at Last by a guy named Richard O'Connor. And it was such a great read. I mean, it was like a real page-turning read and very practical and all about like, it was talking about positive psychology and happiness in life, but in ways that I hadn't thought about it before, because it was really about all the little things that you do, like just little mind shifts that you make where you're just, nothing's really all that different. You're just kind of looking at your life through a different framework. Mm-hmm. And so as I was reading this book, it was very kind of inspiring, and it started filtering in to the book. And that's when I decided that one of the characters ought to be a person who was getting a degree in positive psychology, so that she could talk about some of the stuff that I was reading because I thought it was so interesting.
That was the place in the book where the scene is evolving and this character is talking about noticing three good things and how happier people are just more wired for it, or they tune into the good things. I put my book down and like told my husband about it right there. I was sitting on the front porch reading, and I said, this is so interesting. And I said, sometimes I feel like I'm the person that will, when someone says, how was your day? I will always tell them the bad thing first.
Yep, me too.
And I'm like, and I think I'm a pretty, I try to be happy, but I do know that when something negative, something I perceive as negative happens, it stands out and it really tries to cloud out everything else.
Yeah, I'm that way too. And I married a guy who is the opposite. Like he's very positive, and he can find the good in any situation, no matter how bad it is. Like he can find a way to find something funny in it, or make you laugh, or get you a chocolate milkshake, or like find some way to make things better instead of worse. And so I loved reading about this description of what it means to be happy, because as I was reading it, I was like, that's my husband. Like he somehow instinctively has always known to do these things. Whereas I didn't really know to do that stuff instinctively. But early on, we've been together for 20 years now. And early on, I found myself kind of watching him and noticing that he was happier than a lot of people that I knew, and sort of trying to copy a little bit what he does. And so, yeah, I think that's part of the reason why the book really resonated for me, is that, the main character of the book, Helen, she's had a hard year, and she's in a very kind of dark, difficult place at the beginning of the story. And one of the things she needs to learn to do is appreciate the things that are good in her life. In fact, she kind of heads out to the wilderness sort of thinking that she's going to find happiness kind of far away, Mm-hmm. But in fact, the journey winds up kind of turning her inward, and she winds up looking in the life she's already living and just seeing it with different eyes.
It's interesting. So I had this page dog-eared where she just arrives, and all of these people going on this hike with her, much younger. And she said, they lived on the mistaken assumption that their lives mattered, that life was essentially fair, that it was all going to wind up happy in the end. I knew what they didn't, that everything you care about will disappear, that deserving a happy life doesn't mean you get one, and that there really is no one in the entire world you can count on but yourself. I had the edge that disappointment gives you. And I was like, whoa, because I don't think I'm that kind of person, but I think I actually try really hard to not see things that way. And when I start getting any hint of feeling depressed, that's kind of what's happening. It's like, is this just all like pointless?
What I've kind of started to understand the older I get is that so much of how you react to anything that happens in your life has to do with the framework that you're using to look at whatever it is that's happening. So, like, if you get cut off in traffic and your first thought is, man, I just cannot catch a break today. And you, like, you add that to your list of all the other terrible things that have happened to you that day, then it becomes this kind of, another bad thing that's happened to you. And it's more proof that you're having a bad day. But what my husband probably would have done in that situation is been like, oh my God, that guy cut me off. He's probably having a pretty bad day,
But I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not having a bad day. He is.
Yeah, I mean, actually, yes. I mean, he turns it back on, other people, and so I think, I think there are people who kind of are just collecting, like in a basket, sort of collecting negative things of like, this happened, and then this happened, and this, and that's what they're remembering is this kind of negative things that have happened during the day. And I think I was definitely that person growing up. And then there are other people like my husband who are kind of collecting the good things as they go through the day. And that's kind of what they're holding on to and what they're remembering. And one of the things I thought was so interesting about that book by Richard O'Connor was he said that it's not just that you remember everything, but you focus on the negative or the positive. He said it's really connected to memory. And so if you don't make a choice to focus on and remember the good things that are happening to you, you'll forget that they ever even happened. The only stuff that you'll even remember is the bad stuff. And to me, that was really interesting because it's not like you remember it all, because memory is so subjective, right? So it's not like you remember everything and you're choosing to focus on the bad. It's like, unless you make a choice to remember the good stuff, you're going to forget it. Mm-hmm. And then it's like it never happened. And then the story of your life is this collection of terrible things that happened to you. And I mean, I think that was my instinct early on in my life, was to do it that way. Mm-hmm. And I've worked really hard to kind of try and shift over and remember the good stuff that's happening instead.
The epilogue is really powerful. If you haven't read the book, don't skip to the epilogue. Wait for it. I found it. There it is. But the things we remember are what we hold on to, and what we hold on to becomes the story of our lives. We only get one story, and I am determined to make mine a good one. I just almost cried as I was reading that out loud.
2 days before this book came out, my uncle died, and he was this really fantastic, fun, funny, sweet-hearted, warm person who I adored as a child and who I always got airplane rides from and had a great time with. And he was very special to everybody in our family. And it was kind of an unexpected thing. Like, we knew he was sick, but we didn't know that he was going to pass away so quickly. Mm-hmm. And, I was really giving a lot of thought at the time that this book came out to the fact that life is just so full of good things and bad things happening at the same time, that like it's never just one or the other. You never get to like a day when everything's okay. It's not like you can ever solve all the problems and get them out of the way so that you can finally be happy. The truth is, there's always going to be stuff you can't solve. There are always going to be struggles and heartaches, and there's going to be grief, and there are going to be hard things in all of our lives all the time. And, I think it speaks to the kind of book that I like to write, because I write books that are, in theory, I'm trying to make them funny, but they're also bittersweet. Like, there's a lot of sorrow in there too, because for me, life is so much about the way those two things shift back and forth, and the way that comedy kind of comes out of heartbreak and sorrow. Like, that's the reason that comedy exists, right? Is because we're not squirrels, who don't know that there's a cold winter coming. Like, we're humans, and we know that we're going to have a lot of things that we struggle with, and that people we love are going to hurt and be sick, and there's not going to be stuff we can do about it. And I think that's part of the reason why we need things to be funny. And that's part of the reason why we need to learn how to create hope in our lives. Mm-hmm. And, for me, the better I get at creating hope and appreciating the good things when they happen and enjoying the sunshine when it's a sunny day, the better I am able to kind of savor and relish the story of my own life. So yeah, I think what Helen, the main character of this book, is going through is very much what I've been trying to teach myself for, like, you know, my entire adult life, is how to be grateful, you know, how to be grateful for the good things without necessarily having to solve the stuff that's not perfect, because it's never going to be perfect.